So, hi everybody, it's JL Rothstein here, author of the Heaven Sent series. My new book, Atonement, is out now, so go check it out on Amazon or on my website at jlrothstein.com. Thank you for tuning in to see my segment, Three Questions With. Today we have a very special guest in Elizabeth Holland. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining. So Elizabeth is a health blogger and an author of a novel that just came out, right? When did your novel launch?
Just over a month ago.
Oh my goodness, so that is relatively new. So the book is The Vintage Bookshop of Memories, which I have read and reviewed and highly recommend for everybody that's looking for something to add to their new summer reading list. So we are going to launch into a very quick interview segment. Elizabeth has sent me the questions ahead of time, but not the answers. So I get to be just as surprised as the audience that's watching to hear her responses. So Elizabeth, first question to you is, what is your favorite thing about being a writer?
I think with this question, there's definitely more than one thing. I couldn't limit it to just one. So I think the first thing is, I feel like I've got so many stories just buzzing around my head, and being able to put those down onto paper, into words that people can read, it's just amazing. And it's endless possibilities of being able to write anything. You can set any scene, whether it's fantasy, you can literally create anything. And that just amazes me to have that potential. And again, I think my imagination is where my creative side comes from, because I can't draw at all, not even a stick man.
Yeah, neither can I, so no worries there.
So I feel like that's my creative outlet. And also, I think a huge aspect of it is meeting other authors. It's that side of it has just blown me away. I hadn't been expecting it at all. But connecting with authors, Twitter's been amazing, which is where we met. And just getting to know everyone, reading their stories. It's crazy how amazing people are, and the stories they've created and their writing. It just blows me away. It's amazing.
So you would say the aspect, I guess, of world building, right, is probably one of your more favorite parts of being a writer. The fact that you can create any world that you want, the fact that it can be on Earth, or you could create a whole new other Earth or some other planets. You would say the world building side of writing is one of your favorite parts.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I think in my book, chapter 4 is where I describe the bookshop, and everyone that's read it always feeds back to me and says it just sounds so magical the way it's described. And I love that, because as I was writing it, I was sat in the middle of that bookshop and I thought to myself, what would I want to be looking at right now?
So you were in an actual bookshop when you wrote that chapter then?
No, I was thinking of the actual bookshop in my head.
So is this a bookshop that is real, that you've then fictionalized?
I think it's snippets of little bookshops that I've been in. And every bookshop that I've been in, I've taken my favourite thing from it, just to create. It is magical. The idea of a magical bookshop is, I think, every book lover's dream.
Yes, for sure. I know from my own book, I know I had a scene where Debbie goes to a tea shop, and I've been to a multitude of tea shops. There aren't as many here as there are in Europe, but we have a few, and I kind of pictured in my head not only what would I like to see in a tea shop, just like you know, what would you like to see in a bookshop, but also what were my favorite things about different tea shops I've been at, and then jam them all into one place. And I always joked that, you know, maybe someday I'd open up that tea shop, you know, I'd have that tea shop. I think everybody has that moment. So who knows, when you become a best-selling author, maybe they'll, like Harry Potter land, they'll make Elizabeth Holland's bookshop and everybody will walk through that. It sounds fantastic to me.
That sounds amazing.
So I think that kind of moves us into question number 2, which is, what helps you stay motivated and keeps you writing?
I think, again, it's having all those ideas in my head, and I just feel like I need to get them on paper. I think I'm quite a motivated person, which I think definitely helps to be able to sit there and force myself to write. There's so many distractions, so many like Twitter and things like that, so I have to put my phone to the side. Myself to sit down. But I also think the other aspect of it, and I know it's a bit of a controversial subject, I think, but it's having people read your book. And I think that is hugely motivating to know that people are reading it and enjoying it. And I know I take such pleasure from reading, and to know that my work is giving people that feeling too.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think every writer has that ego part of them. I think if people say that they don't, that's not true. You know, they're not being honest with themselves. I mean, you're hoping that somebody's forking over money to purchase a book and something that you've created, and you're saying that it's worth their time, it's worth their effort, it's worth their money. So obviously there's that aspect of it. But like you, I think that, you know, motivation has to come from inside first. You have to have it within you, but there's obviously lots of things that we can do ahead of time as writers that can help us to tap into that. So one of the things I thought was interesting that you sent over with your questions, which is your third question, is, you know, do you outline before you're writing, or do you just write?
I'm really bad at this. I like to think I outline. It gets as far as, yes, I want to write a book. I want it to have a bookshop in it, and I want it to have vintage fashion in it. That was about as far as my outline got before I just needed to sit down and I needed to start writing. But I think sometimes that's the best way of doing it, because as I'm writing, the story, it writes itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's something a lot of authors do say. As you're writing, you get to know your characters and you decide where their lives should go. And I think sometimes that really, really works. I want to be a little bit more organised in future and outline.
I would say, you know, similar to you, and maybe it was because it was my first book, but I didn't outline. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I don't do this for a living. I didn't go to school for writing. I tell people all the time, I'm an accountant. That's what pays the bills. I manage an accounting department in the city. And, you know, so when I sat down to do this, it wasn't like I had anything to tap into. I didn't have any sort of background to say, oh, you should do this along these steps. And I had read books about writing, and there obviously are a million blogs and a million things out there that to tell you how to go about doing it. But for me, I went on instinct. I just sat down and started writing, but it definitely had its own problems later. When you go in to piece it together, it was like, this would have been so much better if I had had at least even just a rough idea of going from A to B to C. And so I wouldn't say that I'm a complete convert, that I'm doing the exact outline, but I definitely have like a higher level, like summary level, I would say, of an outline, so that I don't kind of get lost in between. So I don't know if you found that to be the case when you were writing.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming this was your first book, but all those things you loved that you sort of put together, I'm wondering if you found that difficult at the end to kind of make it a complete story.
So it actually wasn't my first book. I've written 2 others. I've got a short story that has been published. And
oh, nice.
The first book I ever wrote is just sat on my desktop, just
Oh,
sat there
no.
waiting to be edited. But the first book I wrote, I think they say every author's got a book inside them. And that felt like the book I had to write.
Yep.
But I think it needs a lot of editing. Whereas the Vintage Bookshop of Memories, which I've got here,
Nice.
that the lack of outline did, as I carried on writing, it did become a little bit of an issue. But at that point, I think once you've got your draft done, you can then go back, and then your draft is almost like your outline.
Mm-hmm.
You start to be able to link things together and to sort of make the story flow better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's how I've approached it. But I'm planning an outline at the moment, and this time I'm gonna do it properly.
Well, that sounds like the right way to do it, and sounds similar to the experience that I had myself. So totally understand that. And then I know you have a blog. So on your Twitter feed, it says that you're a mental health blogger. Do you also blog about writing?
I have a little bit. My blog and my followers are more there for the mental health element. But I like to keep it about my lifestyle as well. So how I live with my mental health, and my writing is a big part of that. So I do try to bring it onto there, but I also don't want to make it look like I'm constantly throwing my book in their faces, sort of trying to get them to buy it. So I'm trying to get a balance, but it's definitely something that I do want to showcase on there.
Yeah. And is this self-published? Did you self-publish this one? I forget. the Vintage
Yeah,
Bookshop.
yeah, it's self-published.
So same for me. So are you finding it a little bit exhausting to go out there and be your own advocate and be, your champion and your marketing advisor and everything soup to nuts? Are you finding it as exhausting as I am, that you're constantly out there? You do have to be your number one fan.
Yeah,
It's a strange place.
It's crazy. I mean, I spend my life on Twitter at the moment. I'm stood there cooking dinner whilst having my phone scrolling through Twitter in my other hand. It is crazy. But I think it's sort of paying off. I mean, I know I'm getting feedback from people saying they've read my book, and that feels amazing, and that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, for sure. No, Twitter has been an amazing support system for me. And I've told a lot of people how nervous I was about going on Twitter and how it's the opposite of what I thought it was going to happen in getting out there. But it does kind of feel, I don't know if you share the same thing, but it does kind of feel like that in and of itself could be its own full-time job, that you could really sit there all day. Now, I'm sure there's a million people out there listening thinking, okay, find something else to do or hire someone, or you're doing it wrong, which all of those things could be true. But it's quite a balancing act. I mean, I don't do this full time. I don't write full time. I have a full-time job. So just if I was writing full time though, I'm thinking, I guess I would split the day. I guess I would spend half of it writing and the other half doing social media. I mean, when you are self-publishing, you have to you have to wear so many hats.
Yeah, I think the social media side of it, trying to market your book, is tough. And it's not just scrolling through Twitter and, liking people's posts and retweeting. It's genuine engagement.
Yeah.
That's what helps, which means you need to be there, participating in all the conversations, remembering people, and just genuinely getting to know people. And that is tough. And it's mentally draining as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say just one last question, and I know I've gone outside of our scope, so I apologize. But, since we were talking about mental health and we're talking about how draining it is, I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this who also self-publish who are finding the same problem, right? Is that you have to somehow recharge. You have to somehow refill your cup, if you will, so that you can then tap into it when you want to write your next book, or you want to write your next short story, or you want to do some other sort of project. How are you, recharging? How are you sort of resetting for yourself mentally?
That's a tough one. That is a tough one because it means so much to me. I'm throwing myself into the marketing side of it, but I am seeing that when I'm sitting down to write my next book, I don't quite feel in the right frame of mind because I'm so exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm trying to it's a balance. It really is a balance. And I'm trying to create time just to relax, to pop out, even just to go grab a coffee and then come back and then write. Just so I've had that break from everything.
Yep.
And it's important to try and put my phone down sometimes.
It is a little bit addictive. I mean, when they talk about certain things are addictive, it's like, I don't want to miss this, or I find out something I missed later and I'm like, oh man, I wish that I had known that I would have supported that person or done that person. But it's, you can't keep up with it 24/7. And then obviously there's time differences with people, but this has been absolutely fantastic. I cannot thank you enough for joining me. And I hope there's bits of wisdom in everything that you said that I hope people watching today, especially if they're self-publishing, will take away. And for anyone who wants to learn more, the name of the book, and you can hold it up again, is The Vintage Bookshop of Memories, which you said has been out for how long again? I'm sorry. A month?
It's been out for just over a month.
Just over a month.
It's a month
Perfect.
and a half now.
It's flying by, right? And you can obviously find Elizabeth out on Twitter, which is where we met each other, and you're at Holland author out on Twitter, so we can find you out there as well. So thank you so much. I hope everybody has a fabulous week and goes and visits Elizabeth's Twitter site.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.